don't think that I'm some kind of rich chick. I'm aware that poverty is not contagious. However, when our teacher suggested swapping lives with someone from our group, I was surprised that Patricia chose me. She's the weirdest girl in our school. Hi all, I'm Dorothy, and I recently got through the worst nightmare of my life. I swapped lives with my poor classmate and got into hell. We've never been friends, as we were too different. She had a pretty rough life, though I could admit that she was one of the best students. I heard her family was quite poor. Pat's parents were raising 3 children, and were at the edge of poverty. And certainly I could see her clothes and stuff that she takes to school. But I didn't care about all that. The fact Pat became my partner appeared as a not pleasant surprise. I was waiting for somebody to submit, but everyone remained silent, and the teacher wrote down our names together in her journal. The next morning, I turned out to be in hell. Literally. A taxi brought me to the worst part of our city. Father told me that according to the paper's statistics, the crime rate is at its highest here. And it was not a surprise. The row of houses, tiny and ugly as the dog kennels. Little lawns with litter and clotheslines instead of decor. Dirty children. I hated the place from first sight. I honestly didn't believe that somebody could live there. Well, there were a lot of things that I didn't understand. Pat's house looked just like the others. Small and in desperate need of renovation. A creepy woman with a little girl hanging on her leg met me. Those people were Patricia's relatives. I got to know that information from a woman that was telling me while waving a ladle over my hand. Then I was told to unpack my things and come to the kitchen to help the mother make breakfast. Unfortunately, they didn't tell me precisely where I should go, though I figured it out myself. There were only 3 doors in the hall. Seemed like Pat shared a room with her sister, the one little thing hanging on the mother's leg. The room looked like a mess and reminded me of a scrapyard. We had some gray cereal and pancakes for breakfast. The meal was absolutely inedible, although for that family it was kind of a feast. I had a desperate wish to leave, but I didn't want to look impolite, so I just smiled and said nothing. After the meal, I stayed in the kitchen to wash dishes while the kids allegedly cleaned the room. I came back and saw that my bag was open, but all the litter stayed where it was. So I figured out that the kid had something more interesting on her mind than tidying up. Well, I wasn't angry at her, and even gave her some hairpins and my makeup kit. Anyway, I wouldn't need it there. I'm rather squeamish and she already stuck her nose in it. Everything went even worse. The woman bothered me at all times, asking me to clean something or to help her with the kids. By the way, the girl was 6, and the boy was 2 years old. The man tried to talk to me about some weird stuff. As it appeared, he worked at the museum and was interested in the history of my house. There was no TV in that house, let alone the internet or some tech, except for the fridge. Everyone looked at my smartphone as if it was the 8th wonder of the world. And the fact that the clock could ring seemed like a Satan trick for that family. Also, I was very hungry all the time because I couldn't eat things that they used to call food. Not to die from hunger, I got takeout from a fancy restaurant, and of course, I paid for it myself. But instead of being thankful, that crazy family cooked something terrible and the mother hid the normal food somewhere. In the evening, my biggest dream was to end that terrible nightmare. I became hungry, nervous, and very angry. Pat's mother stormed into the bathroom where I was and started screaming that I was wasting too much water. That was the last straw. I called for a taxi and drove home. Surely I slept in one of the guest bedrooms, and in the morning, had an exclusive chance to see Patricia's hysteria. She screamed that she wanted to be adopted by my parents and wanted to live in my house. Well, I could understand her. I would also scream and hold on to everything if I should have to come back to that house. I failed the experiment, but it was too late. Pat wanted to hang out with me, and I wished to forget everything that happened to me because of her. Finally, I freaked out, and that was not very nice, but it seemed like Pat even wasn't insulted.
Hi everyone, I'm Patricia, and you know what? My life sucks. It's so lame. From the time that I swapped lives with Dorothy, the only things that I could think about started with what if, for 24 fleeting hours, I felt like a real princess from a fairy tale with her own castle, beautiful royal horses, and a high-class carriage fit for a noble? Once again, I've turned into a nobody from the slums. It's absolutely disgusting. Sorry, wait. Let me tell you everything from the very beginning. I chose Dorothy myself, not because we were good friends, but because she was something I would never be. Rich. I wondered how it felt not to have to count every penny. Maybe Dorothy wanted to swap lives with someone else, but there was no other candidates and nobody asked her. That's how I appeared in this castle. And Dorothy went to my little pauper hell. You know, I used to watch TV shows at other friends' houses about stars and celebrities, and I envied them because, well, they had what I didn't. Sure, with a little effort, I could be considered beautiful and maybe even smart, but what's the point if you have to barely scrape by living every day of your life? But I had no idea about the true extent of everything that they have. Dorothy lived in a mansion. Well, as I mentioned, it's a castle, quite literally, too. It had little watchtowers, stained glass windows, flying buttresses, elegant archways, and other sweet ancient crap. I remembered when I first saw those gilded gates, which were opened by a private security guard, and then a butler took me to the castle. There were beautiful flower beds that smelled sweetly of spring, elegant statues, and finely crafted topiaries on the way to the house. I got to meet two perfect people. Dorothy's mother and father were a little on the old side, but still very regal, as though they were some elves with elegant straight backs and friendly smiles wearing expensive clothing. That's when I felt a little uneasy. What kind of enchanted realm did I stumble into? I'd always thought perfection didn't exist, yet here it was, right before me. Then everything went by really fast. They showed me Dorothy's bedroom. It was 3 rooms with a freaking art gallery in between them. They have a dining room that can seat like 50 people, a library that's bigger than the public one down the road, a gymnasium with an awesome pool, and the cherry on top, they have their own writing arena. Apparently, Dorothy's mother was a fan of the equestrian sport, and after seeing what the power of money can do, I felt like nothing could surprise me anymore. The poor, ragged little girl from the slums nearly fainted from the opulence when I first got here. Even one tiny little statue, a knick-knack, really, that was in this mansion was more expensive than my entire house and everything in it. And what food did they have? Oh, it was delicious. I didn't even know about the existence of half the stuff I ate, let alone their names. However, I tried to make a very good impression and didn't gorge myself and carefully used the cutlery. Although, I think I might have used the wrong fork. They looked a bit surprised at one point. Who needs 10 forks? Anyway, I was given permission to call the servants if I needed anything, and was left alone in Dorothy's room to think over everything I'd seen. I was trying to grasp it all, but it was too much for me. The fact that somebody can live like that blew my mind. Who are they, really? Royalty? The elves from a lost age? How could Dorothy, with all that wealth, study in our plain little school? Honestly, her weird behavior made a lot more sense now. She could buy the whole school and hire all the students and staff if she wanted to. That's why she treated us all like we were something insignificant to her, like background noise or little bugs. Suddenly, I found myself thinking that I really hated her. But that was the best day of my life. I'm not even exaggerating. I was desperate, and I started to think, what if they offered me to stay here forever? I'm better than Dorothy is. I have better grades. I look better. Does the universe have no sense of fairness? I've lived in poverty for 16 years. Haven't I suffered enough? The rest of my time there, I tried to make the best impression on Dorothy's parents, showing them my finest sides. I was smart, witty, helpful. They praised me, but that miracle didn't happen. In the morning, the butler came and said a taxi was waiting outside. It was like I was being kicked out. I'm already well acquainted with the fact that life isn't fair, but I had dared to hope. But miracles don't happen. A rich, lonely family taking pity and learning to love a poor orphan street urchin. That stuff only happens in books. Not that I'm even an orphan, but anyway. Allowing myself to hope and dream only made the letdown that much worse. I became hysterical. On the way out, I grabbed at the door and begged Dorothy's parents, please let me stay here. Please, I'll do anything. I imagined returning to that hovel, the dark room I share with my sister, the endless work, the drafty nights. I just panicked. I'm a little ashamed because those nice people tried to be hospitable and even played the game our teacher created for us. They pretended to be my parents. They seemed like they cared for me. Eventually, I calmed down and went back to my dumb, gray life. Where else was I supposed to go? Since then, I've hated everything that surrounds me. I hate my parents who gave birth to 3 children despite not having enough money to care for them. I hate Dorothy for everything that she has, from her perfect parents to her own horse. I hate myself for feeling this way, and because now I know what kind of life I could have. So now I cling to the only hope I have left. I've decided to hang around Dorothy, to pretend to like her as if we're best friends. Maybe she'll invite me back to her house. But she tries to stay out of my way. Maybe the reason is that she spent 24 hours in her own personal nightmare that was my house. When you grow up having it all, any alternative is terrifying. But you want to know what? It's much worse coming from that than seeing what heaven feels like, looks like, and then being forced back into hell. Dorothy and I, we've never spoken about it. Maybe someday. Please write in the comments what you think about the story and its characters. Like, share the video with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.